Hi, everybody. We are here and we are talking Ring of Honor, Best in the World. Just got finished a few minutes ago. And, not my favorite Ring of Honor pay-per-view, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't completely bad. It was decent. It was good.
Wow. Negative right out of the box. But Rob West, even before we got on, saying not ROH's best show by a country mile. By the way, she's Kelsi. I'm Paul. You forgot to completely introduce us.
Well, that's who we are.
I can guarantee you this podcast will not be as long as our podcast that dropped this morning, but it will be longer than the championship match. What was that? 12 minutes for the championship match? I did time it. It was 12 minutes. Ridiculous. Hey, Dave, by the way, and hey, Rob.
If our podcast was shorter than that, we'd be in trouble. Then it'd be a really uneventful show to just have a 12-minute podcast.
I mean, that really took me off guard, the ending of that, because I know they were up against it time-wise, but in the past, they've bought an extra half hour of satellite time or something to have your championship match go 12 minutes and really kind of have Jeff Cobb dominated by Taven for his first loss. I was a little disappointed by that, for sure.
Well, that's the thing that I think I opened up this podcast with, like, a negative view, but I feel like the main event was so short, and that's kind of what left the taste in my mouth. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, there was a lot of things I loved. I love the Flip Gordon joining Villain Enterprises. I think that's really smart. It's very evocative of, I feel like, when Marty joined the Bullet Club, because, they had that video package of Kenny Omega, and then it pans over and it's revealed that Marty Scurll has joined Bullet Club. Then you cut to the ring and he is just in the middle of the ring. Very similar to the Flip Gordon thing, where Marty's just talking, and you were even saying, like, he just left the ring. Why are they showing a video package? It's so awkward. But if you look at it from the Bullet Club kind of throwback kind of thing, then it makes sense and it kind of almost fits, because it's almost like an homage.
Some other comments as some people are weighing in. Chris Counselor saying that ending was off. 6-man match went way too long, and that probably is a big part of it, because they were totally up against it time-wise. I'm fully in that belief that's what they're, unless Cobb had an injury or something as well that we don't know about. That was just really quick.
No, I don't think it had anything to do with an injury, because as we saw, the time hits right at the top of the hour. So it was obvious that they were just running out of time, which, as Zach said, it's an ROH rarity, because usually ROH is known for their high quality wrestling, and it's not known for short matches like that.
Dave weighing in saying the match of the night was the King Jay Lethal match. Dave, I'm completely in agreement with you. I thought that was the best match of the night.
I actually have to agree too. I really liked it. And I was so looking forward to the Briscoes versus Nick Aldis and Colt Cabana. And then when it was Eli Drake, I mean, not that wasn't okay. It's just like, I'm not a huge fan of Eli Drake. He's okay.
No, look, I think Eli Drake is a good talent and a good signing for NWA and by an extension Ring of Honor, I think. But yeah, it would have not been nice for Colt to be in there, but Eli Drake was a good surprise. There had been so many rumors. Was he going to show up at Fyter Fest? Was he going to be at this show? Was he going to, where was he going to go? So interesting to see Eli Drake joining. And I love the guys talking about how Eli Drake throughout the match says Eli Drake.
Yeah. Cabana was like, "We get it, you're Eli Drake."
that should be a drinking game. And if you listen to our podcast this morning, I said Michael Cole saying the big dog every time during the match, take a shot. Well, if you do that with Eli Drake, either way, you're going to be pretty drunk.
Even though this is a different match, let's kind of address this comment here. PCO screwed up too much during the 6-man match. He's over, but being over and being over the hill are two different things. That's a little harsh. I think he's been great, but yeah, it scared me because he stumbled and bumbled going to the top.
I think he got his bell rung. I think he wasn't all there at the end, because he looked completely off trying to get to the top turnbuckle, and he didn't have that problem earlier in the match. He did. But I think something happened where he got his bell rung, maybe on the apron shot. I don't know, but that didn't look right. And, Rob West saying he hoped Flip didn't hurt himself either on that 450. He immediately reached for that arm. Now, granted, we see guys do that on things like that, But
the way
the guys
Caprice and like Ian was looking after the 450, they were like, oh, they were covering their faces.
And the guys were checking on him immediately too. So yeah, I hope Flip didn't hurt himself. He
just got back from injury. It feels like to be injured again would be the hugest blow, especially after this momentum of joining Villain Enterprises. Now let's go back for a second as we were talking about the Colt Cabana thing not being in the NWA match. That story was right there, ready to be told. I really loved what they had done selling the story on NWA's YouTube channel, NWA 10 Pounds of Gold. Man, just at the last minute to have this happen. And I feel bad for Colt because blood clots, as you said, are a serious thing. It's nothing to toy around with. And he was standing up during the show. So I hope that was okay with his leg and all to be standing on it for so long.
I think he was sitting a lot of the match, but I did notice towards the end, he was standing kind of leaning on the cane. And to me, he should have been sitting in a director's chair or something the whole match or the whole night to take the pressure off the legs. Because as I mentioned on the podcast, if you're an NBA fan, Chris Bosh had blood clot issues and he ended up having to retire because of it. So these are not something to be toyed with, and hopefully Colt can get back in there. But I would have preferred, I actually would have preferred he wasn't even there. He
just taking it easy. Yeah. Cause I don't know about traveling with it. I mean, you're not really supposed to do that, are you?
No, I don't think so.
I'm not a doctor. I don't know what I'm talking about. No, I'm not an expert. So just forget it.
All right, Dr. Kelsi.
I like medicine and science though, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, why don't we go ahead and go through the night and start at the beginning on the pre-show, which by the way, you kind of mentioned this. Ring of Honor's got to be a little more, I don't know, proactive is the right word, but nobody seemed to know when the pre-show was, when the actual show was starting.
We were confused. We were looking up at like 10 different sites. We were like looking here, there, Ring of Honor.
The Ring of Honor countdown clock
was wrong.
Had it to the top of the hour, but really the pre-show started at the half hour. So, their social media people or whatever should have been like, crowd starting, somebody at the building, crowd starting to file in. We go on the air in 20 minutes, whatever. It just kind of was disorganized, and we're kind of on top of things. We're both in TV, and even we're like, all right, is the pre-show starting? It was all crazy, but
it was crazy. Before we go through everything, Anthony from Smark to Death, follow them at Smark to Death, is saying hi to us real quick, just checking in. He had a great take thinking that Flip would be the perfect person to take over Villain Enterprises when Marty leaves, because we all assume he's going to AEW eventually. Flip has a longer contract with Ring of Honor, so yeah, he would be primed to take over. It would be a great kind of position for Flip, and I think this is a great move, like I said before. But let's go through the card. Anthony had a great take with that.
Yep, and we'll see Anthony next week.
I can't wait.
The G1.
And Olivia, it's going to be so much fun.
Anthony, you can weigh in on this. Are you going to the Impact show as well?
No, he's not.
He's not. Okay.
They've got stuff they have to do.
All right. Roush versus Flip Gordon. I thought that was a really good way for the night to kick off. Hey, Ryan, thanks for joining us. Roush has been on a roll. Another guy who hasn't been pinned. And I thought this was a really good match. Kind of looking at Flip with disdain as Flip was trying to beat on him. And Roush is so big and intimidating, but so athletic.
Well, letting Flip go toe-to-toe with Roush really made sense, finding out later what happens later on in the show, because that was such a big deal. Because they even mentioned it on commentary that this was one of Roush's longer matches. And, he hasn't been defeated. So to have him go so long and actually look like he was kind of hurt and at some points almost down and out by Flip, that was really great for Flip. So overall, I thought the match did what it had to do, but still kept Roush looking strong. So I liked that match a lot.
I loved Roush when he was in the corner pointing to the fan and saying, go get that, asking for the trash can so he could beat Flip with it. I thought that was pretty funny.
That was cool.
So Roush wins, and Rob thinks he may go into the TV title picture. We'll see about that. Chris saying that he's a modern day Ultimate Warrior, but better. That's a good analogy. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I do. And then we had the backstage interviewer come out, and I got a lot of controversy on Twitter by saying this, but I'm not a big fan of the interviewer in Ring of Honor. And I know they used to have interviewers back in the day, but for quite a few years now, Ring of Honor has not had backstage interviewers. And I've liked that, because out of all the kind of, I guess you could consider the mainstream companies, of which I do consider Ring of Honor part of that group, they were one of the only promotions not doing that. And I liked it. It gave it a different feel, a unique feel, a natural feel. I don't like sometimes when interviewers, interact with the wrestlers, it can be very corny. And that's why Ring of Honor, it was something different that they didn't do, that the wrestlers just interacted with the camera.
Well, like when Mean Gene did it, he was setting up the promo. Whereas, the modern day interviewers, a lot of them, it's a forced interview. And
it wasn't natural like Mean Gene. I mean, that's one of the all-time greats. I mean, you're not going to get one of him every day,
Yeah.
I'm not saying she's bad. I'm just saying that it doesn't fit current Ring of Honor right now. I know they've done it in the past, but I don't like the feel of it because Ring of Honor was different from everybody else by not doing it. So that's one of my qualms, and that happened right after the Roush match, in kind of like the middle of the ring, not the middle of the ring, right outside of the ring, in the middle of the action. I just wasn't a big fan, but the match itself I loved.
And then after that, Nick Aldis came to the ring to announce who his partner would be. James Storm came out, and you thought it would be him, but it ends up being Eli Drake, as we mentioned earlier, the newest member of NWA, and obviously, by extension, we'll see him a lot in Ring of Honor, and I think that's a good pickup for Ring of Honor, a name guy.
People assumed he might go to AEW, so this was a good get for Ring of Honor because he is a known name, as you just mentioned, and Ring of Honor has to acquire people where they can because their reputation with the fans isn't the highest right now. And that's a shame because I love Ring of Honor. I'm like one of the biggest fans of Ring of Honor. And even though I bashed the pay-per-view, I'll give my final grade at the end. It's not that bad, even though I opened up being really harsh. Yeah, it's really not that bad of a grade.
You didn't bash it like you bashed WWE. It was.
I know. I love Ring of Honor. I would never bash it like that. I'm terrible.
All right. Start of the show, Dalton Castle versus Dragon Lee. And a nice little throwback is Dragon Lee gets Castle in the corner and hits the bull's horns, much like Roush did at G1 Supercard. And you're like, wow, Dalton Castle is going to lose in 12 seconds again.
It was actually a longer match.
But it ended up being a really good match and a really good showing for Dalton Castle, I thought.
But you were saying if they were so tight up against it at the end, maybe they should have made this shorter. However, I feel like Castle was in the position not to have a short match after what happened at G1 Supercard. He needed a longer showing, in my opinion, to kind of get back up there, rise up the card again, because he had been looking, a little low on the card the way they were having him being beat.
No, I was fine with this. In fact, the earlier comment that the 6-man tag match, maybe it was the one that went a little too long. No, Dalton Castle really showed up and showed I like the aggressiveness, throwing Dragon Lee repeatedly over the barricade into the crowd. I thought that was pretty good, taking out people in the front row.
Remember the face that Castle made?
Oh yeah,
those like wide-eyed face. He was like, when Lee jumped up onto him out on the outside. That was funny.
Yeah, Dragon Lee caught his leg on the suicide dive, but still hit a good suicide dive.
And that's when he had the wide eyes. Right. And he was like, "What'd you just do to me?"
Right.
I don't know what it was supposed to indicate, but it was an amazing facial expression.
The two best facial expressions of the night were that and the Shane Taylor facial expression when Bandido caught him. Those were the two best facial expressions of the night.
I have to agree with those observations.
Castle, I also like this twist at the end. He hits the bangarang, doesn't go for the pin so that he can hit the bull's horns on Dragon Lee. I thought that was
like
a cool
revenge.
Touch. Yeah,
exactly. And Dave said that in the comments right now. He's like, you got a little bit of a revenge there at the very, very end. And I like that take a lot.
Are we going to ignore Castle's tights though? Yeah, those were pretty ridiculous.
You were so high.
Yeah,
it's for the weight. It's for the back brace.
Yeah, to hide the waist belt. Brace. But yes, it's like he's an old man with his pants up around underneath his pecs, basically.
Oh, I kind of liked it. It was like an old school flair. I don't know. I don't mind it, but it was hilarious.
Then we got to see the Allure versus Rose and Klein. I thought the funniest thing was the guy in the front row holding up the sign as the Allure came to the ring with a "May I Boo" sign.
Yeah, because if you guys are familiar with that controversy with Bully Ray and the fan that got escorted backstage and got a talking to for basically having a intense interaction with the Allure, we don't really know what was said because, the different parties are saying different things. But, it's a hard line to draw in the sand. Where do you cross the line? Where do you stand on the line? It's a very hard thing to measure,
Yeah, but
about what you can and can't say to talent and what they can say to you.
But I thought the sign was fantastic. I thought it was just a perfect little dig at ROH and Bully Ray.
And they can't do anything about the sign.
No,
so.
it wasn't really even a prominent sign. I'm sure many of you didn't even see it, but it was pretty funny. I thought most impressive in the match, even though people are talking about Kelly Klein, who is pretty darn good, but Angelina Love was probably the most impressive of the four in this match in particular.
I really like Jenny Rose, though, too.
Yeah, Jenny Rose, but she didn't do a lot in this match.
She didn't know, but I just know that I've seen her wrestle great matches, like on the cruise, the Jericho cruise. She wrestled against Ellsworth, and actually it was a wonderful match. She really held her own. But in this match, yeah, she didn't have too much to do, but I agree with you about Love.
The end of the that was the Man-Eater, Maria Manic, appearing, throwing security around more like a man-beater than a man-eater, as she was throwing all the male security guys around.
Beater. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it is. But she was impressive. Good to see her because, look, let's be honest. ROH and the Women of Honor, they need a much deeper roster. They don't have a lot going on there, and they've got to acquire some more talent because, look, I know Mandy Leon is a staple in Ring of Honor coming back from injury, but she's not the best wrestler.
I know.
Oh gosh. So it is good to add some talent, and hopefully we'll see more of this Manic. From what I've heard, she's very talented. And there was definitely
and does intergender
reaction.
Wrestling as well. So I think people were excited to see her. And let's talk about the crowd for a second, kind of like a sidebar. But the crowd was actually hot, which ROH crowds usually are. But in the last few shows, I feel like they had been lacking, including the show we went to. We went to a War of the Worlds show in Chicago, and that one wasn't as loud and boisterous as we thought it would be, and it wasn't as crowded either. This crowd seemed hot, and I liked that. It helps. As somebody watching at home, it really adds to it when the crowd's behind the show and the matches.
Rob West, very good point, talking about a 180. I was looking up Maria Manic, and the first picture I saw of her, it looked like a completely different person. So we'll see more of her down the road. Match of the night, I think a lot of people would agree with us on this, is Jay Lethal versus Kenny King. The last of their series of 3 matches, and both guys got to hit some key moves. Lethal injection by Jay Lethal, but he couldn't put Kenny King away, and Kenny King ended up hitting it on him.
I liked that too. It's kind of like, I'm going to use your own move against you. I'm better than you. I like it because I really love both of these guys involved. King never gets enough props, in my opinion. There's a few people in Ring of Honor who are very underrated. I think King's one of them. I think Shane Taylor's one of them. I will get to him in a little while, but King's really great, and this has nothing to do with how good the match was, but his theme song's my favorite theme song in a Ring of Honor. K-I-N-G, King.
Do you want to do the little shuffle dance? There you go.
I can't do it very
By the way, I was blown away. Kenny King seems like such a young guy, but when they put up the stats of how long when they made their debut, he only made his debut a year after Jay Lethal. So
very surprising.
Guys similar in age, but Kenny King seems like such a younger guy. Maybe because of his entrance and all that.
Yeah, I think he just has kind of like that younger persona, that more like fun, carefree persona, where Jay Lethal really is very serious. Although we've seen him be silly in the past, of course, but I miss Black Machismo a lot. But anyway, most of the time, especially in Ring of Honor, he's very serious, especially lately.
You did like, though, Kenny King doing the Macho Man thing.
Oh, yeah, he was mocking, saying, I'm the Macho Man. And then he was basically acting like he was macho instead of, how Jay Lethal always pays tribute to Macho Man. So that was kind of nice. A little dig there. I love when they work in little story points, little things that add to a match that just take it to the next level. And it's usually just these really cool moments that just add a lot of depth, in my opinion. And sometimes it might not even have to do with a move. It might just be something they say, like in this case.
A lot of people weighing in on that match. Rob West saying the right guy went over. King needed to win. Clayton Shaw says King versus Taven coming up. We've also got King needed that win and deserved it. The person with the crazy sign and with that comment, let us know what your actual name is so we can refer to you by name instead of TW1S3DF.
You almost got the whole thing. 4T3
Yes.
is the end.
Matthew Lopez says it was weird that Lethal lost because he thought Jay would face Taven at Manhattan Mayhem.
That would have been a high caliber match for sure, but we've already, kind of seen them go back and forth, so much. I think you have to wait a while before you get back there.
I agree with that.
Don't you?
Yeah, you don't want to oversaturate.
Yes.
You don't want to WWE it and have 18 matches.
And the whole thing is they had that hour match. Wasn't it an hour? And it was a time limit draw. It was amazing. And a lot of people, didn't give that match very much props. So I think it's right to hold off because that match wasn't even received the way I thought it would be at all. I loved that match. A lot of people were like, that match. I don't know why they don't like that match. That was one of my favorite matches of the year.
Oh, Anx. ANX.
Oh, okay.
Says Kenny King is a staple of ROH. Forget that TNA stint. Sorry for my name. I thought the Kenny King where he caught the suicide dive and turned that into a spine buster was a really smooth move by him as well.
Oh, yeah.
And the shooting star press, which we don't see Kenny King go off the top rope.
They were just saying that they don't see him do that. And they're like, oh, they started making high-pitched noises on commentary. Caprice is just a gem. When he freaks out on commentary, it really is so great.
Yes,
the squeals, they're amazing. And his eyes, but we don't get to see his eyes most of the time when he's on commentary, but at least we get to hear the squeals, which I love.
Kenny King hits the lethal injection, hits the royal flush, and he gets the victory over Jay Lethal. And then this I thought was a booking mistake to have such a great match in King and Lethal and then go to this pure rules match between Silas and Gresham. And you went from the crowd really into it to dead in this match because, it was a technical match. It was really good, but it's hard for the crowd to get into.
Yeah, but what do you think makes them hard to invest in that when they love people? Most of the time, people love Zack Sabre Jr. It's the same thing.
Right.
So why is this Gresham and Silas match any different? Is it because Silas isn't as exciting as an opponent? Is it because of the Octopus Gresham? Maybe he's not as easy to invest in because he's more of a babyface than dastardly heel like Zack Sabre Jr. is. I don't know what the reasoning is, or maybe it was just his place on the card. It's really hard to determine why it's hard to invest in that match, but it was. I found myself not paying complete attention. And I like the people involved.
Can I just say all of the above? Because it is all of the things. I think Silas Young is not Zack Sabre Jr. I think putting it right after...
Well, Gresham's not Zack Sabre Jr. is what I mean.
Yeah, well, or neither is Gresham. Putting it right after the Lethal King match, it was a tough spot for that to put into. And it just, there was so much happening in the Lethal King match. It felt like this technical match was a match in molasses. And, most people are weighing in a little bit too. Pure Rules gimmick should stay retired. Dave Pazewski says, was the Pure Rules match weird to you? Yes, it was. It was just hard to get into. Yeah, especially with the list of rules at the beginning. Like, even they couldn't even really, Todd Sinclair, the mic wasn't working right, so they couldn't really explain the rules very well. So all of it. You've
got Clay saying nobody is Zack Sabre Jr.
Well,
I agree with that. I love Zack Sabre Jr. It's so funny how we used to not like him. Just thinking back, that was so long ago.
I know.
That was like a different universe. It felt like different time zone. Insane how long ago it feels like. Now we love him. We're like obsessed with him.
Jonathan Gresham gets the victory there. We'll see where he goes next. Then it was that it was going to be NWA versus ROH, the Briscoes, and Aldis and Drake. I thought James Storm actually wasn't bad on commentary. He kind of added a little bit.
Like you said, the drinking game comment.
Yeah, making fun of the Eli Drake drinking game. But I just thought he added a little bit to it. Sometimes you throw a guy in there when you've already got other people already on. But I thought he was good.
If Colt was in this match, I would have been a little more torn. But I was behind my boys, the Briscoes, the whole way this time. I was like, come on, Briscoes, them boys. They're like some of my favorite wrestlers ever on the planet. I feel like Mark Briscoe is severely underrated as a wrestler. Everyone always talks about Jay, but Mark really is a gem. He's just got ridiculous facials, but really is a great seller, especially. I feel like his selling really sticks out to me.
Interesting question. I have not heard this, Rob, so I don't have an answer on this. Is it true that Silas Young didn't go to NXT because he didn't want to lead the Forgotten Son stable, or is that a rumor?
I have no idea. I never heard that
had
before.
Not heard
but
that?
That's interesting.
He would fit there, but I could see if he didn't want to lead that.
There was some, tweets I remember he was making, kind of anti-ROH tweets. So I had speculated, and I thought I heard he was leaving. But it seems like that's kind of taken a back burner. I haven't really kept up with the news on Silas, so honestly, I don't know what's going on with him to answer your question, but I'll have to research that to find out more, because I must admit, I'm not up to date on Silas Young, his contract status at all right now.
And on NXT, the Forgotten Sons are having a hard time, I think, kind of getting that push. I mean, they're getting the push, but getting over with the fans. So maybe somebody like Silas Young would help. I don't know. But regardless, Silas for now is in Ring of Honor.
I just feel like he fits Ring of Honor so well. To see him go to NXT, I just don't know if it would mesh as well. Because, smoking in the ring, I don't know. It just seems like he fits Ring of Honor. He could do whatever he wants. He could say whatever he wants. He could wrestle a guy in a squid mask like he did on ROH TV. And it was wonderful. Squid, squid, squid.
Back to Aldous Drake and the Briscoes. So Drake and Jay fight out in the crowd. Then Storm attacks Eli Drake. The bell ends up ringing. I'm not sure if it was a disqualification or a double countout. I thought it was a double countout. You thought it was a disqualification. But either way, then things started happening in the ring, and Colt wants so badly to come out and save Nick Aldis. And that was funny. Ian pleading with Colt, don't go out there. You can't.
I liked that a lot. I thought it added to the match, because I could almost feel it and see it too when they showed the commentary table, the disappointment on Colt's face. I think he really is disappointed because he doesn't miss dates. He doesn't miss matches often. So that's why Aldous said multiple times, it's serious if Colt is canceling a booking, because he doesn't do that. He really doesn't. So I could see the disappointment on his face. I could hear it in his voice. And that's what made that part so real to me. I think it played off really well.
I did too. And then it was funny because I said to you, is Camille not coming out with Aldis anymore? And then, of course, at the end, she ends up temporarily saving Aldis from going through the table, although he eventually ended up going through the table.
She speared Mark. Yeah. That was awesome. I got to say. I love Mark, but it was cool to see that. I think it was Mark and not Jay. I'm pretty sure it was Mark.
Well, regardless, it was interesting to see her back out. You were convinced she was going to reach over and slap Jay. And
I thought, when she was getting out of the ring, I thought she was just pretending to get out, and she was going to rush back in and, slap Jay. And then Jay would get in her face again because he already got into her face once. And it would have been so cool if she was, beating up Jay. How awesome would that be? Because she seems legit scary, as does Jay, of course. But it'd be kind of cool to see. I mean, I know Ring of Honor maybe wouldn't go that direction. It'd be a little controversial, but that'd be kind of cool. I know, seeing her beat up Jay, that'd be awesome.
Chris wants to know, are the boys done with ROH? You wonder that because
I thought they signed contracts not that long ago. I don't know the stats.
But I mean, they were so linked to Dalton Castle. Can they be their own persona? That's the big question to me.
It's hard. I don't think so.
No.
Not right now. I mean, I thought that the whole breakup would lead to, them eventually getting back together. And also, matches against each other. Maybe Castle would find some new boys, or Castle would recruit people to wrestle, somebody to wrestle against the boys. And then we'd see an eventual makeup again. But none of that has played out so far. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with them.
Rob says, Wikipedia officially says that the Briscoes NWA match was a double countout. For whatever Wikipedia's officialness is worth.
I guess it's believable somewhat. Although I heard recently, don't believe anything you read on Wikipedia. Somebody said that in an interview I was listening to.
Allie Love wants to know our thoughts going away from ROH on Paul and Eric on WWE. We'll touch on it, but if you want to hear our full discussion, make sure you check out our podcast.
Where can they find our podcast? Actually, you're watching on YouTube right now on Wrestling Inc.'s YouTube page. Just look on the playlist of WINC podcast and you'll see it's called WINC's Two-Face. That's our podcast that we released today, and it's got a great interview with Mike Quackenbush, an hour-long interview that I did with him. We talk about, barely touch on Eric and Paul Heyman a little bit, and how that's probably a reaction to AEW. and the changing wrestling landscape. Right. He says that outright. I didn't ask him that. He just said that. And we took a lot of other things, but you and I talked about Eric and Paul. And what's your quick thoughts about it? Your condensed thoughts?
I mean, if they get a little autonomy and they don't have Vince lording over them, I think it's fresh blood. It can't be a bad thing. Yeah. But as long as Vince has the final say before guys hit the curtain, to me, I don't know if that's going to change anything. But if nothing else, it adds a little publicity and a little juice to a WWE product right now that is a little stale or a little limp and needs some Blue Chew.
Oh, yes. We'd like to thank our sponsor, BlueChew.com.
See how I worked that all in?
Oh, geez, I'm Pete. Also, we'd like to thank our other sponsor, Wrestling Travel. Go to wrestlingtravel.com, or actually it's also .org. Either one will send you to wrestlingtravel.org. It's like a redirect. But you can get great travel packages to All Out, which we're going to in Chicago. Also, the 2-day Wrestle Kingdom show in Japan.
And WrestleMania as well. So thank you, Wrestling Travel and Blue Chew. I wanted to make sure we got through this without...
Didn't get through it
without... maybe I need a Blue Chew. I need a recharge.
Oh, gosh. Jeez, man. No. Things are getting awkward now.
All right. Bandido versus Shane Taylor. This was a match I was really looking forward to because I think Shane Taylor is really... Thank you. It was a great transition. Thank you. I think Shane Taylor is one of the more underrated wrestlers out there right now. I think he has got really good athleticism for such a big man. And I thought this was a really good match.
As I said, I feel like he's underrated. And I love Bandido, but I feel like the person in the match that's more like underappreciated is Taylor. And that's why I'm glad he got the win.
He had a couple of great moves. When he caught Bandido on the Hurricane Rana off the apron and slammed him onto the apron, I thought that was really impressive. And look, anytime a big man goes off, even if it's the second rope when he does a splash, it still looks good for a big mass of humanity to be coming off the rope.
It really does look, anything he does just looks so fluid and impressive just because of his size. But the funny thing is we all comment on his size, but he's actually slimmed down quite a bit in the last few years. I mean, remember the first time we ever saw him, and then we saw him again. I think he started slimming down probably around Supercard of Honor in New Orleans, maybe even a little before that. But he started slimming down a while ago, and he looks really good. And I think he performs even better. I mean, he was impressive before, but I think he's even quicker now.
We want to welcome in Under the Mat Radio, who says he just got in from the Best in the World show. Says it was a nice show. Crowd was okay, but very energetic. Any other first-person reviews you want to let us know about? Things we may not have seen on TV, feel free to let us know. But continuing on Bandido and Taylor, the Bandido Fosbury flop to the floor was awesome, and I loved him high-fiving the kid in the blue hair. That little kid was
so excited, and like that Bandido even touched him. He was like, "Oh my gosh!" And he looked like he was telling his dad that he was excited. And I thought it was funny that they did a Willy Wonka quote instead of the schnozberries taste like schnozberries. They say the Fosberries are like Fosberries. So it was kind of like a Willy Wonka reference, and I love Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka, not the Johnny Depp one. No offense. I do love Johnny Depp as an actor and Tim Burton as a director, but I don't like that Willy Wonka.
I do agree that Bandido does need to get a push soon because he is one of their best talents. And I think that was emblematic by the move where he caught Shane Taylor off the top rope. We mentioned it earlier in this podcast. Shane Taylor's facial reaction was priceless on getting caught out of midair by Bandido.
We knew that something crazy, like strong, would happen with Bandido and Shane Taylor.
Yeah, Bandido's got freakish strength.
I know.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And so he is unbelievable. But he didn't get the win. It was good for Shane Taylor to get the defense. But I agree with everybody that Bandido also needs to get a push because he's one of their best talents. But,
I mean, because he's a new acquisition as well.
Yeah.
So maybe like his next match, he should definitely win. or maybe his next string of matches, and then he could really move up the card. But I'm glad it wasn't at the expense of Shane Taylor, because really you need to elevate him at some point. You need to have him beat some really high-tier quality opponents, and I think Bandido was that person for him. That's a high-quality, high-tier opponent. That really means a lot that Taylor beat him. So yes, it sucks for Bandido, but it's even greater. The win does wonders for Shane Taylor.
Yeah, I think Taylor needs to go on a little run. I mean, he's been a good soldier for
years.
A long time, where he didn't win a lot. And so I'm happy for Shane Taylor. We've interacted with him in the past. He's actually a really good dude. So I'm happy for him.
Yeah, I'm happy for him too. He was wonderful to us when we interviewed him before Supercard of Honor in New Orleans. And, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Under the Mat Radio saying main event was a little rush. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier, Paul timed it at 12 minutes, and that was just way too short for what could have been a good match. But there was some sloppy points in it, and it just didn't feel like it was what it could be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they knew they were under the gun all along, and so I'm hoping at some point there will be a much longer match down the road between Cobb and Taven. I think it would be excellent. So, look, I mean, we've long said Cobb's one of our favorites, going back to PWG and his showings in PWG.
Oh, yeah. And another guy in PWG, let's back up a minute. The first time we ever saw him, Brody King, was in PWG.
Yeah.
And we were impressed with him right away. And that was our first PWG show we saw in person.
Mm-hmm.
And we had watched the DVDs for a long while, but we were basically struck by his size right away. But he was with a whole bunch of other lighter guys, basically flipping everywhere, and he was keeping up with them.
Mm-hmm.
It was a nuts, insane match. And you saw a lot of the athleticism in the 6-man match tonight.
Yeah. Brody and Marty and PCO against PJ Black, Williams, and Haskins. Before we even get to that, how about the entrance for Villain Enterprises? New music and the ring gear and those belts, all pretty cool.
I love the belts. I love the music a lot. I thought I would hate the music, but it's really reminiscent of Marty's theme. It's just like kind of like a little different, but to me, it's like in the same vein, and that's why I really dig it a lot. But I will say the gear is cool, but it reminds me a lot of the Road Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of said it was reminiscent of Mad Max, the movie and stuff. I could see that too, but really what strikes me right away when it's football pads is the Road Warriors. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, because Marty was wearing a piece of face paint, which again reminds me of that. It wasn't anything like the Road Warriors, but still.
Well, I loved Colt pointing out that Mark Haskins and Marty Scurll were basically wearing the same trunks. They were very similar. Once they
pointed that out, and Caprice was like, I can't see anything else. Once you pointed out they're wearing the same trunks, it looks like they're on the same team.
Well,
that's what he said.
And it's funny because Colt said, well, is this foreshadowing that he's going to join Villain Enterprises? As it turns out, later we find out that somebody else that was going to be invited in the Lifeblood was actually joining Villain Enterprises.
Where does this leave Lifeblood? This is a side question, but, the Juice thing, all these rumors that Juice doesn't want to be associated with Ring of Honor, they were basically, it felt like basing Lifeblood around Juice. And now Flip's going to Villain Enterprises. They don't even want to say PJ Black's in Lifeblood. They keep saying Lifeblood and PJ Black. Yeah. Like, they don't want to say he's associated with them. So where does Lifeblood stand from, from here?
First of all, just make PJ Black a member. Mm-hmm. Somebody early in the comments said they thought PJ Black was going to turn at the end, and he was going to be the 4th member of Villain Enterprises, which would have been a good swerve as well.
I think Flip fits so much better, though, but I could see that could have happened, and it would have fit like the way he kind of walked away. But I think Flip just fits the whole thing way more.
But back to what you were saying earlier about Brody King. As this match went along, I thought he was the star of the match. I thought he was fantastic.
I honestly think he was the greatest part of the match. PCO, on the other hand, looked just wobbly. Like you said, you think he might have had a concussion or like hit his head. He just didn't seem like his normal self at all. Brody King more than made up for it, though. He was, flipping over the ropes, flipping off of the ropes back into the ring, where like toss guys. Just so agile for a bigger guy.
Yeah, like he's incredible.
He really is. I just love him so much, and he just continues to impress me even more from that very first time we saw him to now. It's just like, I think I can't get any more impressed, but then he keeps doing crazy things that just make me think even higher of him.
Yeah, and adding Flip to the mix now, I mean, Villain Enterprises is, you know, when you consider crazy PCO, the personality of Marty Scurll, Flip's amazing, Brody King's amazing for a big guy. This is quite a faction. I mean,
it's all the most over guys.
Yeah.
I think it really is the most popular people in one faction. And I will say I had been critical of Marty Scurll lately, saying like, you know, I thought that he wasn't wrestling his best matches. He didn't really seem to be in it. And that's because, you know, I assumed all his friends were gone at AEW and maybe he was just kind of biding his time. I feel like tonight he seemed reinvigorated. He seemed really into it. And I had been critical, like I said before. So I liked seeing him the way I saw him tonight. I felt like it was kind of a 180. He just seemed like he was more into what he was doing and really invested in his match tonight.
And back to PCO. And again, I don't know if this was because he got his bell rung, but this was actually, to me, one of his least smooth matches coming back. It just, you know, between the climbing the ropes and even when he seated climbing the ropes for Flip, even though that was by design, it was certainly one of those deals where PCO didn't even look comfortable when he did that. So I didn't think that was PCO's best, and running off to get a power cable
because like 6%.
Because I didn't know if you were going to the bathroom. I knew you had
plug it in.
You had another beer. I knew you were fine there. But I did say during the match, PCO versus Suzuki. That's got to happen somewhere down the road.
PCO versus Suzuki. Oh, yeah. You mentioned that during the match, and I was like, oh my God, that would be incredible. PCO wouldn't be phased by the crazy chops. He would get charged up by him and be like, ah! And then Suzuki would just give the evil smile laugh, and then PCO somehow down the line in the match would get knocked over, but then would rise up like he's not human and he's alive. Oh, man, just imagine the great moments you could have in that match. It's got to happen, but it's not going to happen.
Or PCO and Ishii. Just I think either. I'm all about that. I would in one of these ROH New Japan tours when they do it together. You got to have Suzuki and PCO go against each other.
I mean, Suzuki's not being utilized to the best that he can be right now in New Japan. He's got to be put in like crazy spots. Us as Americans want to see this stuff. I don't know what they're thinking, but like the last few times they had American shows, they didn't really include Suzuki in a prominent place. But everyone I know who's really into wrestling loves Suzuki. Put him in a prominent place. Have him against one of your most over guys in ROH. That match would be like fireworks. People would be dying to see it.
Rob says PCO versus Suzuki or Ishii would be amazing. I'm going to add a third caveat. How about a triple threat with those lunatics?
Oh my God. It'd be like the greatest match ever.
Yeah.
The most insane, scary, brutal match.
I want that match, and I want it to happen. Make it happen.
I wish. That would be incredible.
So Villain Enterprises gets the win there. Somebody asked, how long does Villain Enterprises last, was one of the questions. And then I also saw a comment that Lifeblood is a poor replacement for the Elite. So
I saw that right after Lifeblood formed. People were saying those types of comments all over the place, all over Twitter especially. I kept reading that. I could see how someone would think that, but I don't think they're trying to replace Being the Elite because it's just totally different feels to the factions. Being the Elite, the Elite was very cocky and funny, and it wasn't about protecting the honor of Ring of Honor. So to me, completely different feels of the groups. I mean, the Elite was very good for Ring of Honor, but totally different. I don't think that they were making Lifeblood to try to replace it, because I think they know deep down that they really can't. If anything's trying to replace it, I think Villain Enterprises is almost like a placeholder for the Elite / Bullet Club, because they're not really making Bullet Club references anymore for the most part, because, you know, the Bucks were such a huge part of that. Right. And now they're gone. So to me, it's really Villain Enterprises is the thing that's more of a placeholder.
Especially with what you said tonight about the little nod to, you know, them bringing Marty into the fold.
For Bullet Club, it was just like that when they did the video for Flip. It was very reminiscent of that Kenny Omega and Marty Scurll revelation video where they turned on Adam Cole. I remember that. It was great. And I think this whole flip thing going into Villain Enterprises is unique because they had a lot of interaction in Being the Elite, the YouTube series, where they kind of clashed heads. And then they did that whole thing where Marty and Flip take Japan. I think it's pretty funny. Marty and Flip take Ring of Honor. I just think the chemistry that they had all along on Being the Elite was so good. And I feel like the way Marty introduced him, talking about how he was an intern and a student, I feel like that kind of makes sense with their history. If you think about it, like, Marty doesn't really want to talk about him like an equal. If you think about all the way they've interacted in Being the Elite, it was always like Marty kind of bragging and bagging on him. So if you think of that history, it makes perfect sense why he would think of him and accept him as a student or intern lower than him, whereas he's the leader. Of course, you would accept him if he's the one in charge. Right. So I think it makes total sense. Like, people might be asking, why is he going to accept Flip all of a sudden? Because he's his student. He's under him. So I kind of like it. That's my philosophical take, but still.
We've opened Pandora's box on some matches now. How about Villain Enterprises with Flip against Suzuki Gun? Suzuki, Killer Elite Squad, and Sabre Jr. in an 8-man tag.
Oh man!
Then there's
KES is broken up because I think it's Davey is gone.
Yeah, I think so. Marty and Flip versus God. That would be a good one.
I would love that. Marty and Flip versus God. Oh yeah. We're going to get the Briscoes versus God again soon.
Yep.
I can't wait to see that.
Yep.
We're supposed to be there live,
Manhattan
but we can't be there.
Another live note from Under the Mat Radio. He said, while Lethal was laid out from losing, fans kept trying to hit him in the face with streamers. That's pretty funny. So the end of this match, if you weren't with us earlier, we talked a little bit about it. Obviously, we're talking a little bit about it now. Flip comes down to the ring, and it seems like he's going to join Lifeblood, as our dog
he never barks like this.
Is getting worked up about something outside.
Jackson. Stop. It's all right. Jax. Come here. What are you doing?
He's trying to be
sorry, guy. I don't know why he's barking. He doesn't do this usually.
Maybe here.
He's antsy. He might hear the beagles. He doesn't like these beagles that are running around outside. He thinks they're dangerous. I mean, every time you go outside to look for them, he like whines like you're going to get hurt by the beagles.
All right. So back on track. So Flip looks like he's going to join Lifeblood after there was an attack on Lifeblood. I'm so distracted by Jackson. Bandido saves, then Bully comes out, then Flip comes out. Looks like he's going to confront Bully Ray. Then Lifeblood offers Flip the chance to join Lifeblood. Crowd goes crazy. Building goes dark. Marty Scurll somehow is already in a jacket in front of a screen backstage. And
you're like complaining about it right away. We're like, why is he on the screen?
It was just a little ridiculous at that point because it was like he literally just went backstage. I'm thinking the Beagles must be outside because he's going crazy.
He is going crazy.
Flip now is a part of Villain Enterprises. We like that. Does PJ Black join Lifeblood? Is that enough to get you guys excited? Is about Lifeblood? Because already a couple negative comments about Lifeblood. What can make Lifeblood more exciting if Juice is gone? Is there somebody else? PJ Black's not it. I don't think that's going to make people super excited about Lifeblood. I don't think
so at all.
So who should they put in Lifeblood to make that faction get over? You guys can weigh in with that as we move along, and we'll get to your answers as you pipe in. And then we'll go ahead and go to the 12-minute main event that was condensed by TV requirements, basically.
Well, people have been very critical of Matt Taven, but I actually have liked him for a long time. He's always delivered in whatever he's done, especially in his feud against Lethal. I mean, that was some high-quality stuff, great storytelling. I love the time-limit draw match. That was really well done. But, this isn't his best showing, but I don't think it really is completely his fault. It's just like, they must have been under some pressure with not a lot of time to work with. But if you compare it to something like All In, where the Bucks got shortchanged, they managed to pull out a great match in like 7 minutes. You could tell something was off, but this wasn't even near that, and I think they might have had more time.
Yeah, Rob. Apparently, Juice has said that he's going to stick to New Japan full time. That Ring of Honor,
This is a rumor, but yes.
Yeah, it's not confirmed, but there's a lot of talk that Juice is just going to stick with New Japan, that he doesn't think Ring of Honor is helping his name recognition, or I can't remember what that
it would hurt.
Yeah.
The way he's viewed.
Yeah. So hopefully that's not true, and hopefully Juice is still in Ring of Honor, but that has been a prominent rumor out there that he's going to go to New Japan full time. Would James Storm make sense in Lifeblood?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know.
I think
that's an interesting thought there.
I think he would be a good fit, but I think they need somebody who's a dynamic mouthpiece. That's why Juice was good there. And
James is. Yeah. He's good at talking, but does he fit the whole honorable thing? I don't know. He seems kind of like more of a mischievous guy.
Yeah.
Kind of out for his own ends type of thing. So that, to me, I don't think his personality fits so much. But it would do great things for Lifeblood in terms of he's a big name,
Yeah. Back to the Taven Cobb match. I know some people aren't big fans of Taven. I think the guy is pretty good. I don't think he's the greatest.
I think he's really good. He's delivered. He's dependable.
Yeah, and he's solid, and he's not afraid to take a bump, as we saw in that ladder match at MSG.
See, Rod says he's overhated. I agree. Yeah. I feel like people are way too harsh on him. He's a great heel champion. I think he's really good. He's done the work to deserve having a run with the title.
Yeah.
He's put in the time. He's put in the work. I mean, he had this feud against Jay Lethal for so long, and now that it's paid off. Good. Exactly. You can't just have him lose it after fighting to get it for so long. It only makes sense that it was so hard to get it from Lethal that he has it for a while, and it's going to be hard to get it from him. It makes the title remain prestigious, in my opinion.
I did love the Taven suicide dive that had so much momentum. It carried Cobb into the barricade. I thought that visually that was a good thing, with Cobb going head first into the barricade.
It looked brutal. And I liked on commentary how they emphasized that and said, see, I think it was Colt saying, see, he's using his own weight against him. He's using Cobb's weight against him by kind of basically banking on the momentum when he runs into him, that the weight will carry him forward. I like how Colt played that up. Very much a wrestler type of comment to say. I liked it a lot.
And Jeff Cobb, I was disappointed for Jeff Cobb in this regard, is, his first championship match, and he didn't really get a chance to shine very much. One of his coolest moves was the slingshot into the suplex, where he yanked Taven off the turnbuckle into a suplex. And of course he did his standing moonsault, which is amazing for a guy his size. But
yeah,
I felt bad for Cobb because I don't think he got a really good chance to shine.
I agree with you. And Cobb's one of the best talents in the world. So
yeah, as we saw at MSG, that great match with him and Ospreay.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I just think the time didn't do them any favors.
Yeah.
The lack of time, I should say. And man, not that this has anything to do with it, but we talked about so much. We're such big proponents of PWG, and Cobb, that's one of the reasons we found out about him. He had a great tag team with Matt Riddle, another one of my favorites. Another guy who has deceptively strong, tendencies. He can lift people, but he's so tiny looking. It's crazy.
Luis Barunda said after the show went off the air, Taven came out and spoke from the heart, noted ROH is going through changes, thanked the crowd for the support, and promised they'll put on better and better shows. I think that's really cool to see.
Wow, thanks for that insight. That's really interesting.
Under the Mat Radio asked how the commentary was. It was really good. I mean, look, Caprice is fantastic, especially as we mentioned earlier in this podcast. His squeals are the funniest. Colt's awesome all the time. James Storm, I thought the one match he came in was commentary was good. So
Ian having that Belle Biv DeVoe reference with the poison, and then I used the Scrubs Turk gif. Yeah, it was awesome.
Ian's great. I mean, they are so good together, all of them, and Caprice fits in so well as part of the team.
And that says a lot because we don't like 3-man booths. We really don't. So to compliment the three of them, that says a lot, in my opinion, because we don't often compliment 3 guys working together.
And I love Ian. I mentioned it earlier. begging Colt not to get involved. You
Yeah.
can't. The doctor's telling you not to. You can't get involved. Colt pleading with him.
I like it a lot. You can just see that their relationship comes off so wonderfully to the audience. I like it a lot. Actually, you guys, if you aren't familiar with our weekly podcast, it's released every Friday on Wrestling Inc.'s YouTube channel, which you're watching us on right now. Or if you're listening to the audio version later, you also can find our audio versions on Wrestling Inc.'s platforms. It's the same place you're listening to this right now. And it's called WINC's Two-Face, and we interviewed Colt Cabana. Literally like 3 weeks ago, we released this, maybe even 2 weeks ago. I have to look up the date, but check it out. It says it in the title. It says WINC's Two-Face Colt Cabana interview. And I'm really proud of that interview. We talk a lot about the chemistry between Ian and Colt. Colt comments about how they just get along so well, even though Ian is like an old soul, even though Colt's the one who's actually older than him. But they still mesh together so well. And we talked about their references on commentary and a lot of other things. I even asked Colt if he was worried about Ring of Honor.
Right.
With everything going on. Colt said he wasn't, but check out the interview to see what he said in full.
Colt was fantastic at that interview. Looking at some more comments, Shaky Barbarino says MJF is better than both of you, and you know it. That is absolutely true. By the way,
that's like his favorite heel.
I loved the thing MJF put out today of the picture of Flip Gordon. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he said something like, "This is what virginity looks like," or something. And
easy insult.
And I loved the thing when he had to be a part of the Elite question and answer thing earlier this week, and he's like, "All right, let me hear your dumb questions," or whatever. I love MJF. He's fantastic.
He is great. Man, all the things he was saying about horses when he came out and challenged Adam Page at Double or Nothing. Oh, it was wonderful.
Rob, we will tell you our social media for the podcast is at TwoFacePod.
TWOFACEDPOD. My Twitter, which I'm really active on, is at SuperKickingIt, SuperKickingIt. And I have an interesting tweet out right now about who would win a wrestling-themed hot dog eating contest.
Yeah,
which wrestler would win?
Get your answers in on that, because we're going to talk about that next week on the podcast. My social media, I'm on Twitter at pboron88. I am all over the map. If you follow me, you're going to see wrestling, but you're going to see soccer and football and basketball. And
videos that you produce and edit
about
soccer.
Literally,
and football.
I am all over the place in the TV world. I am a jack of all trades. I wear a lot of hats, however you want to say it. People are weighing in on how much better the ROH commentary is than WWE.
So much better. It's insane. Yeah. I do like Corey Graves, though, a lot.
I like Tom. I've told you before, if I had to pick my team in WWE, I would just have Tom Phillips and Corey Graves and nobody else, even though I love how Corey Graves kills Saxton all the time.
I do think that's the perfect pair in WWE. And if I had my choice in New Japan Pro Wrestling, it would always be Kevin Kelly and Don Callis, of course. That's my two favorite pairs there. And, Kevin Kelly is really good with a multitude of people, though. When Caprice went over there, that was awesome. Excalibur from PWG, when he worked with Kevin Kelly, was awesome. Excalibur and Chucky T in PWG, that's a great team together. God, they're ridiculous. It's almost too hilarious.
Yeah, we just talked about that on the podcast this week for a match they called where they clearly had been drinking a little bit.
All they talked about was how fat Adam Cole was, and we don't know why. We have to go back and find the origin. I think we have to go back years in PWG to find it. Many, many years that we've already.
This is true.
We already have.
Clayton, we didn't even mention that Jonathan Grisham cheated, which was
which
was interesting. The low blow, and I love that Caprice said, "Well, he did have one punch left," so so I thought that was a good line too.
That we should have mentioned that is really uncharacteristic of him.
Yeah.
So that actually is a very big deal. Thank you for pointing that out, because we totally were.
I wrote it down. I just forgot to mention it.
to not mention it.
Corey, Tom, and Mr. Mamma Mia. We know how you feel about Morrow.
That's my least favorite commentator. And I really admire what he does for depression and like anxiety and stuff and bipolar. Just mental illness.
You and I are not in agreement on that, because I think Morrow, although
not the best.
The Mamma Mia is overdone, no doubt, but I think he is a fantastic play-by-play guy.
He's too elevated all the time. There's never any ebb and flow with his voice. That's why I don't like it. But if you guys like him, all the more power to you. As we say on our podcast, it's always okay to agree to disagree. That's my go-to saying that you hate, but it has to be said. Whatever. I have to say it. I don't know what's wrong with you.
I know. It's like Michael Cole saying big dog. Apparently,
no,
it has
it's
to
not
be
like
said.
that. It's not like that at all. It's way more relevant than that.
All right. I think we're starting to get off the rails a little bit here. Guys, we're going to wrap up here in the next 5 minutes or so. So anything else you want to weigh in on, and we'll interact with you. Otherwise, we'll kind of wrap things up. While we wait for that, I agree, Rob. Leave the pure rules back in the 2010s.
Yeah.
That, again, where that was. Asking if we're going to do this tomorrow after Fyter Fest. We're not.
No, I think there is another Wrestling Inc. video that's scheduled to go after that. I don't know who the host will be, but we will review Fyter Fest on our podcast, which will drop next Friday.
Right. And
in the morning.
And we'll have that and more of Ring of Honor as well.
And I will say we have followed the Bucks, especially me. If you guys are not familiar with us as hosts, I have followed the Bucks for a long time, many years, and not a lot of people who are into AEW now have followed them as long. Some people have even longer than me, but a lot of people popping up covering AEW. I'm really proud that we've been following them for a long time and know about their Ring of Honor history. We know about their New Japan history. We know about their PWG history. Yeah. Heck, even their TNA history. We did a Bucks special at the first Starcast. We interviewed Dana Massey, which is Matt Jackson's wife. We interviewed all kinds of people about the Bucks. So we will have some insightful thoughts about AEW because we've been following the guys for a while, and we know about not just AEW current stuff, we know about their past in other companies.
Oh, we saw a great match with them and the War Raiders in Liverpool, England at
Newcastle.
Or Newcastle, that's right.
Yeah.
In
WCPW, now Defiant Wrestling.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
I say that so much. I
couldn't remember the initials.
It's one of my favorite matches.
A couple people asking who's next for Taven. Who do you want? Will it be Kenny King?
I think they still have to go through one or two more people, but I don't know, because actually it makes perfect sense if he had so many matches against Lethal and Taven just won from Lethal. I think the next person he has to beat is Kenny King.
I would think.
I guess that is the next guy.
I'm sure Marty Scurll's going to get another run at some point.
He'd have to, but I don't think anybody wants to put the belt on him knowing he's probably AEW bound.
Yeah. Look, I mean, at some point, we talked about this earlier. Bandido's got to get a push, maybe not for the main title, but certainly for a chance at the TV title. And eventually, I think he will get a chance at the title. And a Taven Bandido match would be good.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
I guess we can reiterate because Matt's Under the Mat Radio asking again, social media for us.
At Super Kicking It, SUPERKICKINGIT, our show podcast Twitter handle. It is Two-Face Pod, TWOFACED POD. That's named after the Two-Face Batman animated series character because we two different wrestling personalities in terms of we like different things.
Yes.
That's where it came from. And if anyone's wondering why we're called Two-Faced.
And I'm at PBoron88. She's supposed to be the baby face. I'm the heel, although
we've switched roles.
Although of late, she's turned into the heel, I think. Maybe Roush. Yeah, I agree that certainly is going to get a run at the TV title, I think.
This brings up a point that I kind of wanted to mention. I feel like a winning streak is good in the short term, but long term, you start running into booking problems and you really can paint yourself into a corner. So to me, yes, streaks are cool for a little while, but then they become problematic. So I think they have to watch out with Roush because you don't want to basically crush your whole roster.
Right.
You really don't. This has happened time and time again. If you go back all the way to WCW times with Goldberg, it worked for a while, but after a while, you run out of things that you can do with the streak. Happened with Asuka. Now it's happening with Shayna Baszler, and it could happen with Roush. So I just think that streaks are a tricky thing, in my opinion.
I agree. Luis Barunda saying that the crowd was hot in person for Bandido. Not sure how it came across on TV. Came across fairly well that the crowd loves Bandido, but
you know what came across more than the Bandido love? I mean, I noticed the crowd hot. I didn't really notice him get a bigger pop than anyone else. I felt the Briscoe love, which was awesome because they had been lacking any kind of reaction from the last few crowds we had seen them perform in front of. So it was great. Of course, they've got family nearby.
Yeah.
They don't, they're not from that far away from there.
It's not far from Baltimore to the chicken farm.
I think it's great, though, the way they get cheered so much. I love the Briscoes, so I'm a sucker for that.
Roush versus Taven. Matthew feels they'll save for the next pay-per-view or final battle.
That could definitely be. They're not just going to have it at any show.
Let's as we wrap things up, let's tell people what they can look forward to on our regular podcast. Again, watch our or listen to our podcast this week. We had a great interview with Mike Quackenbush. Great rant by her about the Seth Rollins Will Ospreay debate. We talked about Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman coming aboard. We talked a lot of WWE, a lot more than we normally do.
I totally complained about WWE and ranted.
She hated it. Next week, we're going to be looking ahead to the G1 show we're going to be at in Dallas.
So we'll be there live. So we'll give you a perspective from being there in person, and we're going to be at Slammiversary too.
Right.
So we're really excited.
We've kind of let Impact kind of go off our radar a little bit, especially once they went off Pop and their insane prices on the pay-per-view. But since we're going to be in Dallas, we're going to go to the Slammiversary show, which looks awesome.
And the card is stacked. I'm a big fan of Sami Callihan, big fan of Tessa Blanchard going against each other in an intergender match, head exploding. I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a great show. So we're going to preview that. We'll preview G1. We'll look back a little more at this Ring of Honor show. We will look back at Fyter Fest. So a loaded show coming up next Friday. But since it's only Friday now, it's plenty of time to check out this week's podcast.
Like I said, the interview with Quackenbush, I'm so proud of it. My good friend Mark Blutman, who listens to what we do, we interviewed him a couple of months ago. You should check out that interview. If you guys aren't familiar, he's the co-executive producer and writer of Boy Meets World, the great, influential, historical, nostalgic 90s show. Wonderful, wonderful show. And of course, he really thought it was one of our best interviews we've ever done. So I was really very flattered that he had sent me that message saying it was a great interview. So please check out the Quackenbush talk, because we spoke about Colt Cabana, which of course is relevant to this Ring of Honor show. We also talked about Zack Sabre Jr., how that's one of his favorite opponents, plus much more. The importance of promos, the current wrestling climate. Really, there's too many topics to even name right now.
So make sure you check out this week's podcast, next week's podcast. We thank you for all the nice comments and support for all you guys joining us after Best in the World.
Means a lot.
We want to thank Blue Chew and Wrestling Travel for their great support of our podcast. And so we will wrap things up with a pretty good Ring of Honor show, but certainly kind of like stomping grounds for different reasons. The ending, not so great.
Final grade?
B-.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, Jackson, what was your rating? He's too busy barking at the Beatles.
It's hard because
outside.
I'm the biggest proponent of Ring of Honor, but I got to say B, not A.
No,
I usually give them an A. But there could have been some matches that went longer, some crazier things, and some a little more neater matches that were more tighter. Neater and tighter.
Neater and tighter.
Whatever. I can't speak.
Yeah.
I've had to drink and whatever.
She's put away her Pim's cup. She's ready to move on to beer. And so am I. So thanks for joining us, guys. We appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Yep. Thank you.